Welcome everyone to the special meeting of the Wadsworth City School District's Board of Education for Tuesday, May 26, 2026. We're at the Wadsworth Middle School. We'll forego the pledge and go right to roll call. Mr. Beeman.
Julie Beatty.
Here.
Mandy Ward.
Here.
Bill Stevens.
Here.
Tim Beck.
Here.
Tom Fisher.
Here. If I can get a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes. Second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mandy Ward.
Aye.
Bill Stevens.
Aye.
Tim Beck.
Aye.
Tom Fisher.
Aye.
Julie Beatty.
Aye.
So we're at the point of our meeting for public participation. You were anticipating a guest.
He's on his way. He went to the wrong location.
Can we move this in the later?
We can. Definitely.
Okay. Let's just go to administrative items and we'll move on this until customers here. Okay, so let's move on to number 6, administrative items.
Administrative items is have a personnel consent items 1 through 2. Of note, with the retirement of Dave Ryder, recommending to you that Mrs. Haley Dewar, from the principal of Oakville Elementary, Haley's here with us tonight. Haley's currently the assistant principal of Wadsworth Middle School. With your approval and Haley into that position, we believe that it'll be an internal move for the middle school assistant principal, which will ultimately, I'll show you a few minutes here, ultimately save somebody a job with everything that we're doing. Yeah, they'll do a phenomenal job, but so at this time, I recommend to you personnel consent items 1 through 2.
All right, do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
I just have a quick question, Mr. Dewar. Are you going to be an active participant in helping me get a parking spot with my name on there now?
I don't know what there's no.
We're getting together with
That's all.
We're not going to ask for a speech or anything, but
I owe you one for that.
we'll go for roll call.
Bill Stevens.
Aye.
Tim Beck.
Aye.
Tom Fisher.
Aye.
Julie Beatty.
Aye.
Mandy Ward.
Aye.
All right, we'll go back to number 5, public participation. If anybody here would like to share before the board, we give 3 minutes. You need to state your name, your address. So if anybody here would like to share, this would be the time for public participation. So I'm not sure if you got anything you wanted to share with us.
I'm here to observe.
Okay.
Maybe learn something.
Okay. I'm sure if you had any questions, we'll gladly talk with you after the meeting, or you can always reach out to our administration. So thank you for being here. We'll go over to number 7, board member items. Ratifications and resignations 1 through 4. At this time, we'll take a motion and second.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All right, we'll vote.
Tim Beck.
Aye.
Tom Fisher.
Aye.
Julie Beatty.
Aye.
Mandy Ward.
Aye.
Jill Stevens.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We'll now go to number 8, discussion. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Hill to talk a little bit about our fiscal precautionary plan.
I'm going to display something here for us to look at. It kind of give a quick update on a few things that set the stage for really what tonight's discussion is for. So, and just a reminder for those that are in attendance, we are recording this meeting and it will be available for playback on WCTV. So you might be caught off guard with understanding it's being recorded. So we've been working on some personnel stuff I'm going to show you here in just a moment. The whole staffing side we focused on at your May 11th meeting, laid out what we intended to do. Got the blessing to move forward with it, and we've been implementing that. When all of that's said and done, we're currently looking at a total of about full-time equivalents between all certified employees that include administrators and our support staff. That actually is a head count of 37 people. But it's a full-time equivalent of 32.75 that are being reduced. We have some other things that we anticipate, especially on the support staff side, of implementing reductions as we finish the school year and as we plan for next year, that we'll have forthcoming to you as well. On the certified side, though, we're pretty close to being done. I want to show you the impact. We talked about this at the last meeting. A lot of these cuts, though not all, but a lot of the cuts came at the elementary level, where we currently have 66 teaching sections between 5 buildings, kindergarten through 4th grade. With what we discussed at the last meeting, we were reducing 14 sections based off of enrollment numbers and based off of the understanding that this would lead us to need to potentially, and I'll show you here what this looks like, but more than likely we were going to need to remove students who are currently in their home-based geographic school this current school year and place them in a building that is not their geographic home-based school for the upcoming school year. So when we look at this, these are our numbers right now with students that are enrolled currently and the building that they're in grade level, right to left, kindergarten to 4th, and the building that is their home-based school. And this does not include, we have 3 multiple disability cross-categorical units in Valley View, which have their own teachers. So those teachers aren't represented in the number above, the students aren't represented here. And we have an ID special education unit in Franklin, which is the same. So when we look at the actual number of where we have students and then what our class sizes will be if we average and split these out. So as an example, we're projecting 233 kindergarten students. We're gonna have 10 sections of kindergarten. That average then, when we actually walk into, if we split these evenly like we attempt to do across 5 buildings, you should see 23 per teacher. Some teachers' room will have 24. And as you go across the 5 buildings in the district, if we evenly distribute students based off of the new counts. So there's our target class sizes then, averages, based off of the number of sections that are projected enrollment by grade level. Enrollment, I'm going to talk a moment about kindergarten. This has been hard to project for us. The last 6 years have seen a significant decline as students go into kindergarten. That is the results, we believe, when we look at all factors, that there's just less kids in Wadsworth as there are many places in the state of Ohio. So as we look at this and we take a look at the date on the left is the date that we pulled data in that given year. The number then to the right of it is how many students were enrolled on that date. The far number on the right is how many students we ended up with in January of that school year. So 7 months later, so as an example, April 20th of 2020, we had 209 kindergarten students registered. When we actually looked at the enrollment for kindergarten during that 2021 school year, in January of that year, we had 281. So we projected, based off of the last 6-year average, 271 kindergartners for this upcoming school year. When we look at where we were on April 10th at 185, and we look at what the average then has been from that point in April till January of the school year in question, we're adjusting that for these purposes to 233. So when we look at this then, these are the number of sections by building when we do those reductions that we'll have. So the Franklin will have 2 kindergarten, 2 first grade, 2 second, 2 third, 2 fourth. That's how this reads. This is the anticipated then, if we're evening numbers across the buildings. This is where we would anticipate the number of kids that we would have to move out of the building that are currently in their home-based school. So you can see it's about 60. As far as, this will change though, it always does. We get students that move out over the summer. We get students that move in over the summer. We do not finalize building placement decisions until early August. But I want to show you here, if we didn't balance these classes and we just left kids in their home-based school based off of the sections we're going to have because of these reductions, you can see that the disparity that we would have between buildings and a grade level. So as an example, in kindergarten, our highest building would be 23 to every teacher in Franklin. At Lincoln, the 2 teachers, one would have 13, one would have 14. So that's a big difference. It's something that we purposefully moved away from years ago to do our best to balance these numbers out. And the extreme is over there in 4th grade. Lincoln, we're going down to 1 section.
And that kindergarten is based on 5, not 233.
It's based on 233. We're basing that on 233 because that's what we believe will be at. Right.
You're right, that's 233.
Yeah, that's true. This is based on, I'm sorry, our projection up here, this is based off of where we're at right now. But we expect these to grow as we get those additional students. The biggest disparity is 4th grade. You have 35 to 1 teacher at Lincoln, and the lowest is over there at Franklin, 21 and 10. So I would suggest to you that with the reductions that we've made, it's going to be important for us to be able to move students out. And I don't think we can accommodate this. So there'll be future discussion on this with a process of what that actually looks like that will be brought to you for further discussion in the future. If we need to discuss any of this tonight, we absolutely can, but there'll be more on this to come. As far as the staffing stuff goes, we've been working through a process with our administrators to actually go through how are we going to do all of these moves then, because it gets complicated. We have licensure areas that people can work in based off of certain subjects, based off of things like intervention specialists. We have grade levels that they're allowed to teach by licensure. We have a contractual agreement with the Teachers Association that follows the law but lays out procedures where we're going to do a reduction in staff where people will lose their jobs. So at the end of the day, with all of that, we came up with where these moves are going to happen in order to allow for those reductions to occur. Our goal the whole time has been to minimize the number of people that are going to lose jobs through attrition, other creative ways that we can do this. Today, I spent the day with the co-presidents of the teacher union. Having for most of these face-to-face meetings, we ran out of time towards the end of the day, and so the last 5 or so had to be phone calls to people after work hours were over. But we went around and informed people of what their assignment's going to be for the upcoming year. Across the board, because it's not just the elementary. The elementary is a reduction in 14 sections. We're reducing a section at the intermediate school. We're reducing a partial section of ELA at the middle school. We're reducing 4 teaching positions at the high school. We're not filling the associate principal position at the high school, we're reassigning primary duties to our student wellbeing mental health coordinator for the upcoming school year to focus on the position that formerly was a school counselor that we're losing through retirement at Grizzly Academy. And we have 2 counselors at the high school level that will be splitting time at Isham Elementary School while we have a maternity leave through November of this upcoming year. So there's a lot of things, but this is a list of who's moving. I shared this with all of our staff within the last 40 minutes, roughly, as kind of an updated things. We still do have a couple of moves to make. We believe that we're going to have to, with a couple of the moves into the intermediate school, there's probably going to need to be an internal or a couple internal transfers, so I let our staff know that. We'll work on those the next day or so. The other is the middle school assistant principal position that Haley's currently in. We have 3 internal candidates that are currently teachers that are appropriately licensed that express interest. Our goal is, we believe we will find the fit with one of those 3, is to then recommend to you one of them to become the new assistant principal at the middle school, which will then open up a teaching position. And so somebody that's on the list here for a reduction in staff, which is losing their job, will probably not end up being recommended to you at your June 8th meeting for the formal reduction in staff, effective August 17th, which is the first day of the new work year. So somebody that's on here, depending on who we move, will end up coming off of that list based off of licensure and other factors detailed in the negotiated agreement, once we know who that assistant principal is. But you can see here, we have a lot of people that are making moves to positions that they're licensed for, we believe they'll do well for. Some are excited about those, some would rather stay where they are. We have 6 people that are slated to lose their job. The first 3, David Dickinson, Jocelyn Thompson, Adele Agler, are part-time encore teachers at the elementary K-4 level. So David is physical education, Jocelyn's music, Adele is art. With the reductions that we're doing in sections at the elementary, there's no longer a need for those part-time positions. Andy Booth, as you know, is on a retire contract. There's an MOU, a memorandum of understanding you previously approved for retire-rehire situations that lock in at a certain salary level and other things and other provisions in the contract that aren't available for retiree-rehired into a teaching position. You have an MOU, by the way, with the Support Personnel Association as well. One of the provisions, though, in that MOU is that there's no seniority. So Andy retired. Andy otherwise wouldn't have been anywhere near reduction, but because he's on a retire-rehire agreement, there's no seniority, nor is there any right to recall. If he won't go on to a recall list like the other 2 will, or the others will, the other 5. Peyton Chaddick is high school math. Just happens to be where she's at with all of the factors. She's kind of the bottom person. We may end up, we don't know, with what was shared today with some people. There's the possibility, at least one voiced, I'm not sure I'll take that position, I may resign. If something like that happens, then that may allow for a recall that we're not anticipating right now.
So what's the date for that?
What was it?
What's the date for that, don't you know?
There really is no date. If the person's going to try to seek employment elsewhere after July 10th, you would not have to let them out of their contract for the upcoming year. And if they chose to do that anyways, then we could file something with the State Board of Education, and the penalty could be that a license gets revoked for a 1-year period of time. But prior to July 10th, there really is no recourse. While you have to accept the resignation, it's really a formality in the law. It's not anything you can stop. So I told that person, the sooner you know, the better for us if you come to that decision, but they have time. Jordan Curtin is one of our elementary teachers. Again, this just has to do with licensure, where she's at. Some of this stuff gets complicated. We have people that are lower on the list in one licensure area, that are higher on the list in another, which then means they have to be moved to the area that they're higher in licensure or seniority on with the list, if all things are equal. So there's a complicated thing in the contract that deals with the last 3 evaluations. It's continuing contracts are in one category, limited or first in another. There's points over the last 3 years of evaluations, but if I'm a limited teacher that teaches high school math, and I have the highest points I can through evaluations for 3 years, and I have another teacher that does high school math with the highest points in a limited contract, it's going to come down to date of hiring and who's got more seniority at the end of the day. So that's where we're at right now. There'll still be some staffing moves we anticipate off of what has happened today, but I bring this up and take some time while we're focusing tonight's meeting and ask for a special meeting to look at non-staffing stuff. I don't want it to be lost on anybody that there's plenty of staffing stuff that's actually happening here, that the staffing is where the bulk of what Doug's going to show in a little bit is actually coming from. Because as we've talked about numerous times, over 80% of our operating budget is people. Because we are a people business and a service that we provide. So it has to come from somewhere. I would tell you too that we've been able to minimize, when you look at close to 40 positions, 35, whatever it is, positions, close to 40 people, jobs being eliminated, a lot of that's through attrition. We've been able to be creative with some things that we've done. If we have to continue to go further, the choice made this time that you gave your approval to at the May 11th meeting is larger class sizes in the elementary, which will have an impact. A teacher can't do with 25 what they can do with 20. And there's a bunch of teachers that could be in here to tell you that. There's research that would support all of that. What we were able to do, though, at the expense of those class sizes primarily, is be able to preserve programming and services for students. And if we have to continue to look at reductions at the level that we're looking at, the magnitude that we are now, I don't foresee how the next time we're able to stay away from having to choose what goes. And that's where the feedback from that survey that we put out with transportation and some of those things that are above the state minimum operating standards will become important for us, along with other discussions that need to take place. So if we go back then to the reason that we had asked for this meeting, it was to look at and have discussion about the non-staffing items that are included in that fiscal precaution plan and slated to start in fiscal year 27, which starts on July 1st of this year. So those items, we have them listed here, are reductions in these different areas: custodial supplies, bus purchases, professional development, technology, replacement vehicle allocation, non-performance field trips, which I'll define as this. Before the most recent change that we made a number of years ago with the district paying for field trips, when a school or teacher wanted to take their 3rd grade class somewhere, the principal had to either figure out through PTO or through their OAT's account how they were going to provide transportation. The district did not cover the expense. If there was outside payment to take care of transportation, because we can't charge students transportation costs for field trips by law, then we allowed it. There was a point in time years ago in the district where field trips were just not allowed at all. We got to the point where we allowed them if there was a funding source that didn't cost the district money for transportation. Never included in that was groups going to do OMEA for choir or band, their contests, or athletic contests where we're busing students with all of that. So I would suggest to you when we get into that certain thing, what we mean by that, right now at least, is to take a step backwards to where if they're going to do a field trip, it's not a complete prohibition. There just has to be a funding source that's not the district general operating fund for the transportation related costs. That's what that means. Okay? Doesn't mean that's where it has to end up, but something is an example like if we have something happening where all the cost is covered, I wouldn't suggest to you that we stop that if that's possible.
An example of that, many teachers have gotten grants for like their state house trips. There's lots of grants out there. And that kind of parts of the grants for different things that go to the departments of the county. So we get a lot of funding from those sources for field trips that cover transportation costs.
Chromebook replacements, stop paying the online processing fee. Each of these we can delve into. We have some of our directors here tonight that can speak directly to some of these items and the type of impact or thoughts they have on this. If that's something that you want to get into, they're here and available. On the revenue side, we have in the plan an increase in the activity assessment fee, which currently is for things that are extracurricular, not tied to an academic grade. That's what the law allows. So I'll give you an example of something that's extracurricular but tied to an academic grade, marching band. We cannot charge the activity assessment fee to marching band because it is tied to their academic grade. Okay, but if we have all of our sports are assessed the activity assessment fee. So at the high school level, that fee's $100. This has been in place since before me, 2008 or 9. At the high school level, it's $100 per sport. The middle school level, it's $75 per sport. Clubs are $25. We have a family cap of $500. So we have in there to increase by 50% those. Building rental fees are all tied to your board policy. We can pull that up and look at it tonight if that's something you want to look at. We're suggesting though the rental fees, that we have different groups with what the charges are, but we're suggesting rental fees be increased. And then the class supply fee, again, I can show where our current fees are tonight if you need to see it. The one that we're talking about that's in the plan is the general $30 that's applied K-12 for supplies. What I want to note on this, excluding rental fees, the activity assessment fee and this class fee that we're talking about do not anywhere come close to offsetting the district's expenses within all of those areas that they impact. They help defray the cost. But they were never intended, nor are they actually offsetting our expenses for sports as an example. They don't come close to it. When you look at supplemental contract costs, when you look at transportation, other related things, obviously there's some assistance with boosters and other things that happen. There's ticket sale revenue that helps. But those are the items tonight. And I just want to preface this too, we put these in the plan back in December. We put them in the revised plan in March that the state was submitted to, but we were very clear with the state and in the narrative that what's in the plan can change. You're not, the question tonight does not have to be, unless you want it to be, do we do this or not? It can be that we can go in and look at these. It could be that percentages can change. It could be that the fees could change from what's here. However you want to tackle this tonight is something that we can do. We're not locked to what's in the plan. We are locked to needing to come up with some numbers to be able to get ourselves out of the financial hole we're trying to dig out of right now for fiscal year 28. Do you want to speak to that? Is this the time to share some of that? So I'm going to turn this over to Doug, and then he can show some number stuff in a moment, and then we can come back to this if that's okay.
So the document that I passed around has 3 pages to it. The first page is taking what Dr. Hill just had up there, just saying it's basically putting numbers to it over the course of the next 2 years. So this year, 27, 28, 29. Why are we looking at those 3 years? Those are the 3 years that are currently in our 4-year forecast projections. So that consists of this year, 26, and then 3 years after that. So the revenue enhancements at the top, the non-personnel reductions, that you just had up there, and then the personnel reductions that we spent the first part of the meeting going on. If we take all of these for every year, so again, all those reductions, this is what our forecast starts to look like. So I've added those revenue enhancements in here. And then I've backed out the personnel reductions and the non-personnel reductions. So the personnel reductions, obviously, if you look from this year 27, 28, take a big jump. That's primarily because in that first year, we have to recognize the severance payments that we're going to pay to those teachers that are retiring, and then that goes away. Also, there's no savings in the first 2 months of the fiscal year, so it's only a 10-month savings, because teachers will get their accrued wages paid out during July and August, which are the first 2 years of the fiscal year. So that's the 2 reasons why there's not a huge jump in the savings going from 2.1 to 3.2. It's the same people. It's just we don't have the severance in there, and we have full 12 months of savings as opposed to 10 months of savings relating to those positions. And then again, the non-personnel that's in the middle. Come down to the bottom, we still want to focus on this line right here, which is how much we have to spend. So it does not change the fact that we are continuing to deficit spend in each of the years of the forecast. But what it does do is change that fiscal year 28 that was hovering between 6 and 7 million, depending on which forecast you look at. The October and February forecast, because we had a lot happening there with property tax reform, that piggyback, and different things that were happening there. But it does take that fiscal year 28 number, and does create a positive cash balance at the end of fiscal year 28 of a little over $2 million. And we continue to deficit spend though, and you show a deficit in fiscal year 29. So as I mentioned at our meeting a few weeks ago, fast forward to July 1st, fiscal year 29 becomes year 3 of the forecast. We forecast and update as required by law in August. That will be year 3. The good theory is fiscal year 28, which has been our goal, is now positive with these reductions. Fiscal year 29, year 3, we will be right back in fiscal precaution with the Ohio Department of Education and the plan that Dr. Hill referred to numerous times. That was based on all this information will be required to be submitted back in. Big reductions to eliminate that $6.3 million that is currently showing as a deficit in fiscal year 29. So just to summarize again, if you look at here, you see the personnel reductions, total $2.1 million in year one, almost $3.3 million in year two, and more than $3.3 million in year three. Non-personnel reductions hover a little less than $1 million to a little more than $1 million in years two and three. And revenue enhancements for those fees are hovering around $150,000 in each of the 3 years that we're projecting. The document, as I said with you, also the last page has some, it's important, I think, to remember what's in the forecast going forward. So if we look at the numbers that are there that remain the same, then to our income from property taxes and state aid, as well as our staffing, it's important to know what's in there as far as moving forward, increases that are, whether it's property tax increases, what's happening on the public utility personal property tax, where you actually see a decrease in the second year of the forecast. You can see here we're going from 8.1 to 7.7. That's related to the retro payments from the next pipeline. That's detailing that summary of the forecast assumptions, as well as what's in there related to staffing moving forward. So we still are showing reductions in staff next year. In the forecast of additional 3 positions that have always been in there because of our declining enrollment. So that is those 3 people, in addition to the 20 some that are this year, are still in the forecast moving forward, as well as the base freeze for WA Westbrook and the true freeze for non-union is in there, and then what's in there as far as wages into the future in fiscal years 28, 29 are kind of just summarized there, so we don't lose focus on other opportunities that might be out there to make reductions. So it's a quick summary of the impact of the proposed reductions that are in there. We can be interactive here if we want to see, like, hey, if we do this, or if we change the activity assessment fee, or if we don't do Chromebook replacements, example, in years 2 and 3, I can go ahead and take those out, and you can see what the best numbers. So I've got this spreadsheet on my screen here, and then it changes I make to do that. So if you have any questions about how something might impact something, we can look at the long-term impact of those things as well.
You probably just said that when you do the forecast again in October.
It is now August. So remember, it was November, the legislation there with all the property tax reform, House Bill 96, moved into August, but because they passed that in June, they gave us to October last year. So it was November, October, now it's August. So that was August and February are the required updates. We can do one at any time.
Yeah.
So if we come out of this and we know exactly what we're going to do, we can do one in June, July, just to, so we have something solidified.
Based in August, then we will require to submit another plan
Yeah.
in January, December.
As soon as we submit that forecast
We'll get
to
it.
the department, we'll get a letter from the Department of Education over the course.
So we're gonna do that regardless.
Pass back in fiscal precaution, and then that we would require.
It
If we go
probably,
back to the ballot or not, that's going to happen.
yes,
Yeah.
until we figure out a long-term solution here, we're gonna be in that situation, and it would probably be, if October's board meeting led us to like a December 21st or 2nd date to submit. Now it's August, so we're probably looking at an October date, I would guess, to actually submit the plan. That's a guess based off of their timeline the last 2 times. Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways to take this tonight. Obviously, the things that we've slated to be reduced do have impacts. And that's why we want people to be able to speak directly to that, so as you weigh what to do, we understand what the implications are of what those decisions mean.
Why don't we talk a little bit about some of those reductions and how it's going to affect the schools? If any of the admins that are here with us wanted to share briefly. Mr. Jackson, Mr. Walker, if you might share about how some of this is going to affect your roles and your areas. I'm looking at Eric, I guess Eric. So.
Sure, that's fine.
If you don't mind, I mean.
Yeah, happy to touch base, yeah, through our department, we're happy to tighten our belt, and do our fair share, I think is the bottom line. What I am trying to do as early as today when somebody made a request is just ascertain information to what is truly needed to do their job. As an example, I spoke to our transportation director today, who submitted a significant request for professional development. And I just had a conversation again to talk about, was it a what or was it a need? And the information he provided was because we're trying to build their educational knowledge on the buses and different things that they could do in-house, that we could do in-house, the training would be very beneficial. So that's just one example of really empowering our people here to do more as compared to just opening that floodgate. So I believe with the proposed cut for my budget, we could still make do, but just tighten our belt a little bit and ask some more challenging questions to make sure it's what we need versus what we want to move forward in a positive way.
Recognizing that need one in this case is all beneficial for the school district with what we're sending people to learn and bring back and implement here.
Thank you.
I think an area also the rental fees that you have listed increase. So our rental groups are very important. So group one that we have is basically our youth organization, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. Currently, we do not charge for that group to use any facility as long as it's during the regular work hours of our custodians. And if they wanted it on a Sunday when we don't have it, we would charge them the custodian cost. So it's no charge to us as a district. Group one is would not be affected by the 50% increase unless we were charging more for custodial costs, which I think we're okay with that aspect of it. I would suggest that you have that conversation. If we want to have group one, we charge a rate. If we went through group two, is our travel groups. Those are the groups that are 50% Wadsworth, 50% those travel teams, which a lot of those travel AAU teams that are not allowed to be all Wadsworth. Everything that's all Wadsworth is in group one for the most part, which again, I'm not suggesting to do charge, I'm just saying that's a conversation that we should probably have with those rental fees. Group one, if we charge those, and all of our youth groups, WASA uses our facility all the time. Youth basketball, boys and girls use our facility all the time. Lacrosse uses our facilities all the time, which we're happy to do, and they work with us on how that all works, but that's something that is not on your list of rental fees unless we start charging group one a nominal fee to use that. And that they use them a lot, so it would add up rather quickly for those organizations. That's something that will be affected by that. Groups 3 and 4 are those. Group 4 is some of these for-profit users. Group 3 is some that are outside, that are non-profit, but also not following group 1 or 2. Increasing those by 50% would probably price out a lot of those groups. We start adding up our facility cost, depending on what they use. It's a good bargain for people, but it would start pricing that high. So that's really the challenge that we have there.
Okay, so what's the cost then for like an AAU group 2?
Well,
Or is it
So
vary?
here's the board policy at my group, and then the different spaces that are in the building. So as an example, if you're in group 2, a high school main gym is $35 an hour. If you're in group 4, it's $100. And AAU would fall into that group 4 category.
Group 4, unless it's owned by Wadsworth employee or Wadsworth not employee, Wadsworth resident, and that could be group 2, but per hour adds up pretty quick. So it's per event. It would be a 2-hour, 4-hour event practice session, and they use it multiple weeks in a row. So it could add up rather quickly. You could using a basketball facility, our Overlook Elementary might cost $80 every time you use it. The youth organization uses it 5 nights a week for 3 hours a day. In basketball season for 3 months. So it adds up pretty quick.
So if you decided to do something with rental fees, what that would 2022 would be a revision of the board policy that we'd be bringing forward to you, probably at your June meeting, or whatever that decision is made.
Since we're on that, just, the rentals, is there any thoughts or discussion from the board on that specific area?
Like I said, would not be a fan of increasing or charging the cruise one, because that's just gonna end up going back to our residents' homes. I got less of the group two as I may, when I want to come to. Partially, yeah. Personally, yeah. That went to the nonprofit and then all of it.
Yeah, I would agree on this, group one, I would propose.
I agree too.
Steve, any other thoughts on that?
Nope, I just.
Appreciate your sharing.
There's some cost to us, so we run into, custodians up here, and they take the back up and clean the gym or whatever.
Yeah, and we
Restrooms and just like in order.
Yeah, if we have situations like that, it's worded that we can charge if they're staying over, where other people are.
Do we have the concessions open, are there any benefits in any of those groups that are?
not typically, but if they are, then they benefit out.
If you have a big tournament on weekend.
Athletics does give, that is a huge fundraiser for athletics when we do these AAU tournaments.
Yes.
So that is true.
Yeah, and some of our groups have that, we cheerleading competition, or choir program, because we are have, where we do make some money for those organizations, and a lot.
So I also wouldn't want to start that. I guess if our AAU team is practicing, they're going to practice 20 times over season. I mean, it's probably a nuisance for that.
And I would say that our youth organizations, as a whole, work with us very well. Because sometimes we, last minute, we have to cancel things based on our schedule. So track bank comes up and we have a meeting there, so very, very cooperative, it's very two-way.
Not to put anybody else on the spot, but any other admins, if you want to share, share with me if you want.
Yes, there are just a number of directions that we can go with all of my thoughts. Because I have so many. But I'm listed here twice. Chromebook replacements at 100%, which at last year's cost, that is reducing the technology budget by $429,000. And then 30%, which W shared with me is $150,000, which I think technology is wrapped up in so many different department budgets, sometimes it's hard to know, okay, what are we considering 30% off? But let's just say it's $150,000. So we're talking about reducing by $570,000 the technology budget for top tomorrow, which is significant. The one thing to bring to your attention about the Chromebooks, you can certainly make do, and we will be making do with, we purchased 400 Chromebooks this year, normally we buy 1,200. So we just bought 400 this year to get us down the line a couple of years. So instead of a large expense, we're going to buy a small batch. We're going to use up every bit of surplus that I have. I'm going to issue Chromebooks on the same schedule that I have been doing. Every 5th grader gets a brand new Chromebook, and every 9th grader gets a brand new Chromebook. And they keep it for 4 years. A 4-year refresh cycle has what is historically worked really well. After 4 years, the Chromebook, I wouldn't even say is viable to do much anymore. Being how slow it is at that point. Its resale value is almost 0% after 4 years. So the market's amortizing it down to 0 after 4 years anymore. That being said, we can create more savings by elongating how long students keep Chromebooks. That would have a drastic effect on the student learning, like the ability to pull up websites and do their homework.
same problem getting on the internet and other stuff. Is there any other direct? We had issues before with Chromebooks that were out of date with what the state would allow for updates on
Because
testing.
you're right, and so Andy's talking about how there was this sort of squeeze moment where all of the testing agencies said you have to be on this version, and it orphaned millions of Chromebooks across the nation. And we were almost bit pretty bad by that. A lot of school districts were bit really bad. There was such a backlash to that Google is now, this is not a solution, but Google has sort of adjusted what they say. And they're like, it's cool, if you buy a Chromebook this year, you will get updates for the next 8.5 years, is what they say. The device will turn dust before 8.5 years. But they're saying that they support it for 8.5 years. And so that sort of quelled everybody being upset about that. So testing isn't a factor. Our Chromebooks are still going to be able to update to whatever operating system the standards say we have to be on. I'm more concerned about experientially, as I've been taking in all the high school senior Chromebooks right before they graduated last weekend. They were like, oh, I'm glad we rid of this thing. And I'm just like, this is a bummer. but I get it, like it's slow. So I would caution, like, let's not go beyond the 4 years, but just know that if we do, that's going to have a significant impact. But then also too, when thinking about, I've been going over every purchase order that I've been a part of over the last several years, just trying to identify what we could realistically reduce by. And I honestly don't see how we can reduce the operating budget annually below 100,000. 150, we're going to have to start eliminating things that are really going to affect how staff operate and learn. So, and I have all the notes I can share with you, but can you reduce? Absolutely. We've been in the business of buying parts, and I like this additional thing to help for my classroom. I would like to change this in my office, and we've been accommodating. I can just, like Eric said, be like, okay, how absolutely necessary is this? Or can this, I know it's good what you're asking mechanically, and we've already started doing that, so reducing, I can say we can make it to 100,000, 150. I mean, we're starting to say like, okay, well, let's just eliminate the visitor check-in at every building and the high school attendance office setup. We could eliminate that and save 21,000 a year. That would be a big change, right? So I'm like, I don't know if we can do it. I don't know if we should. But then I'm also, just so that the board knows, I'm also trying to get very creative with how we can save. And I've talked to a few of you in here that we currently spend, there's a purchase order for copiers, all service, the lease on all of those devices, all of the printers we have. It's $125,000 a year. It's a huge number. Can we reduce that? Yeah. And I've been working with companies to get some good results. I was just given a proposal today. We can talk about it, obviously, at probably at a board meeting. But the current proposal is very timely, time sensitive, but it could save us $280,000 over 7 years. So dividing that out, that's a significant savings every single year. Another sort of out of the box thinking I'm doing is Chromebooks have been rising in cost, horribly so, just to give you an idea. And I feel like we're still doing really good, but I'd say 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we bought some Chromebooks that were $185 a piece. And the license that you have to buy with it was about $25. Then shortly after that, the license went to 30, so that's a wash. But Chromebooks went from $185 to $215, $235, $285, $315, $385, $410 is where we're at. In just a few short years, it's like 200% 100%. So, when we're trying to think about this, now we have a $410 student device that after 4 years will have its resale value maybe almost zero. Actually, the companies buy the Chromebooks from us for the parts. The parts are more valuable than the device. And so I've been looking at, what if we don't have Chromebooks? We could actually go with, Apple makes a brand new MacBook called MacBook Neo. It sells for $499, and its resale value is projected to be conservatively 45% of the original purchase value after 4 years. So our TCO, total cost of ownership for 4 years, could be, instead of $410 for a Chromebook, it would be $250 for an Apple, which would be, I've done the speed benchmarking, it's a magnitude of 10 times the speed performance. So just trying to think creatively to help you all out, because this is difficult. So I'm
It's a
trying,
naive question, but do we have an option for a BYOD, at least at the junior senior level?
we don't necessarily, because of the controls that we have to have in place for state testing, but also there is a great deal of oversight in Google Classroom, which all of our teachers use. They administer testing inside of Google Forms in something called locked quiz mode, that's what it's called. And when we have a managed device, the teachers can say, this is locked quiz mode, and then Google Forms takes over the entire computer. You can't go to another tab and put the answer. If they bring their own device, we lose that ability too.
Like device solution testing.
Right.
I mean, Google is obviously in the education world, that may be the last time they use it.
Right.
I don't know if you're ever using it.
That was my other thought. I'm like, boy, that would be a fascinating idea to like give at least high schoolers a device that like once they graduate, hey, we're gonna get $200 or $250 for this. Hey parents, do you want your child to take this to school? Because it's a full computer, you can install Office, whatever else you want. So I'm like, those are the things that behind the scenes I'm working really hard on. To be like, how do we just, let's just totally do something totally wild that could save a drastic amount of money, but it's a very different approach. So those are some of the things, but
How many students in the district have them?
all the way down through 5th grade, they are assigned a device to a student. They keep it, it's theirs, they keep it, it makes the commute. They take it to school, home, they keep it over the summer, and they do that for 4 years. And then when they show up in high school, I say, where's your Chromebook? And
In
then
6th grade through 5th grade, or through 4th, has
cards.
their cards in the classroom, so there's enough one-to-one.
There's-
You just don't take
So
that.
then how many total Chromebooks are we,
What's your inventory?
yeah, how many, thank you.
So you can say that iPads K1 and Chromebooks 2 to 12, we have at any given time, conservatively, I would say 4,500 devices in district. Sometimes there's a surplus in the cart model. We may give 30 in a cart, or 8 in a cart, but the enrollment in my classroom is 26, 25. So there's a spare.
Right.
So we have some flexibility, but I'm going to eat my entire surplus to make it work so that we only buy 400 Chromebooks this year. So instead of spending $492,000, which is insane, we just spent about $170,000. So
34 and 37 is the student count, 2nd through 12th grade, plus the other overlays that he's talking about.
I think that's a good example of, you know, the cost of goods have increased. It costs more to educate a child. I feel that most people would say that we need technology to educate children. And as those costs go up, the cost to educate goes up. And yet, our funding levels have maintained a sort of stagnant place from the state. Any other comments for Phil? Questions?
Are we allowed to seek out sponsorships for Chromebooks, like NASCAR, like it's Pepsi on the side or something? I mean, I don't know if a big corporation like Westfield Insurance Company, Jill, might be interested in sponsoring our Chromebooks. mean, it's,
Yeah.
I don't know, as a public school, are we allowed to get?
The word policy at the moment restricts advertising that's directly geared towards students, whether it's students querying or on something like that. That policy can always be modified by you. If you're talking a Chromebook, I'm not aware, you can research it, but I'm not aware of any law that would prohibit that. If we're talking athletics, there's probably OHSAA rules that prohibit sponsorship, advertisement being on uniforms. So depending on what you wanted to look at, we could figure out where the bounds legally for the policy that you have the ability to modify.
And also to that is, there are some school districts in Ohio and also nationally that do EV printing or laser etching of a name or a sponsor. That usually reduces the resale value by 50% of whatever you can get when it's branded for a school, but it can certainly be done.
Well, if your resale value is $0, it won't matter. You know, I mean, there's a lot of big corporations in the area. I mean, think about the healthcare systems we have with Suma and with, whatever, I mean, I'm not opposed to asking somebody to give some sponsorship money for some programs.
So I want to ask questions just to make sure that I'm clear on what I think I hear you saying. You're saying that what we have in the plan for the technology budget at 30% equates to roughly $150,000, of which you can see a path to get to 100,000, but after that, we're losing stuff.
Yes.
The example that he gave, the check-in system, visit you, at all buildings, it's utilized, people scan their ID, it does a quick check of sex offender database to make sure that whoever's coming in does not show up. At the high school level, we also use it because we have students that are in and out all day long with College Credit Plus, Flex Pass, and other things. They actually have a QR code that they scan as they go into iPads that goes and syncs them directly into our attendance system, the student information system that gets reported to the state of Ohio. So when you look at something like that, it's got, 21,000, whatever Phil said. The decision to get there had security implications behind it, and the decision to get there had efficiency on stuff, and the vendor we're using is one of the few, at least at the time, that actually could have data sync in real time into the student information system to allow for accurate reporting. So, when we get into this stuff, that's where we start to see these trade-offs, like where do we, so if we were to eliminate, if we go above 100,000, and that's one of the things we have to consider, there's going to be a step backwards from security measures we put in across the board. And the work that's now happening automatically through the syncing is going to have to be done by a person at the high school for attendance. So there's other implications on these things. The Chromebooks though, just to be clear, so there's 100% reduction for fiscal year 27, which starts July 1st of this coming, this year. The ones you've already purchased came out of which budget? Fiscal year 26?
Yes.
You're saying you can get us through with the reduced number you did, and you don't recommend that we expand beyond 4 years. So are you telling us then?
No, we can do that. We can reduce 100% of, so
And stay on a 4-year cycle
We
for
can't.
July 1st of,
we can for 1 year.
but the money to buy for fiscal year 28 is coming out of this fund.
You can't wait till July 1st to award those.
That's the problem I'm getting at here.
You're right.
Is that,
No, you're right.
is that we're, the
You
money
can wait
that
till
we're,
fiscal year 28, and ready to go to buy new Chromebooks, but you're probably order them in fiscal year 27.
There's a lead time on a lot of this technology where you used to be able to order it and then it would show up in a month. Now with let's, get your quote in. I was getting quotes for Chromebooks that we bought for this coming school year. I was talking to vendors in November to get a quote lined up to pull the trigger in January, February, like it would.
So there may be a path though to this, like I don't know, I know me and that our ITC, they purchased a warehouse with the idea that, and they're a secondary, what's it called? They're
Reseller.
A reseller. We may be able, because of our relationship with them, to be able to push that payment off, but still have Chromebooks until we got to July 1st and 27.
They have talked about that, for sure.
So we would have to talk to Mac and Doman, but that could be, that we may have flexibility with them
Yes,
that we would with another vendor,
yes.
if they have the product we need.
Andy, what's an ITC?
The Information Technology Center, all school districts are required to be affiliated with one, so ours is NeoNet out of Cuyahoga Falls. And they provide, they do all of our filtering and.
They provide us the internet. The internet comes here through the internet. They provide our student information system.
They're the ones that have the contract directly with the City of Wadsworth for the fiber. That they're providing us, the cost for that is coming through our expenses to NeoNet each year.
So, there were a lot of things I didn't mention, but like the things that I can reduce parts, reduce, our purchases for additional like components and accessories, reducing some minor services to get to that number, but I did not suggest I can do something like that. We currently spend $13,000 on an email security system, which is unbelievably invaluable. There were 14 malicious attacks on the organization's day that had stopped. One got through, but I had to frantically email it. If we didn't have that product, that is quite literally all I would do. It's just run those down.
I would never suggest to you that we eliminate that product. I think there's too much involved at stake with what that's doing.
But it's just interesting when I look at, like, there are a lot of big ticket things, like, these programs are 20, 30, the ability for teachers to see what's on the student Chromebook screen is $61,000 over 3 years, so that's $20,000 a year, like, but I haven't suggested cutting those, I'm suggesting like, I can eliminate, training on my team, we can cut down on buying staples or copiers, we can get rid of paying for very few hotspots, we'll just have 0. We won't pay an outside company to help us with networking wire, we'll leverage our own maintenance team to do that, that will save. We'll go off support for our phone system with the help of a local company to stand in the gap, that will save $21,000. So there's savings, absolutely. It just starts to get really interesting once I push past.
So it suggests for the purpose of this discussion that maybe the technology budget becomes a dollar number of 100,000 as opposed to that percent that's there. And that the Chromebook replacement, there may be, if we find out there's not a path that would allow for payment after July 1st of 27 to secure stuff for that August when school starts, what they would need, they would come back and further discuss, but we may have a path to get there.
Yeah, I can see us maybe checking in with Phil midway through the year and seeing how
Yes.
A lot of the stuff that Phil is in are contracts that come to you for approval. While we do a lot of one-year things that don't automatically renew, there are contracts that we're in multi-year agreements with. Copy machines is one of them. And so there's our ability feels further hampered on some of this by where we're at in a contractual agreement on some of these items as well.
Sorry, it's a lot.
No, appreciate you, it's important.
appreciate all the work you put in thus far to go over your budget. Just keep that and discuss. So,
Joyce?
And I'm the unknown in the room. Mr. Beeman and Dr. Hill tell me that all the time. But the hard thing about special ed is we are legally responsible to serve the needs of kids. And just today I learned about one that's joining our community in August that's going to require some pretty significant support just to keep them safe and learning. So that kind of thing is out of my control because once they enroll, we have to then review that IEP with ETR and then we have no choice but to serve that child. And so that's the unpredictable that Mr. Beeman and I always talk about. But once again, like Eric said, we're all tightening our belts. There are things that I've started to talk to you about, like, we need to think about this. Like, even with the staffing that Dr. Hill shared at the beginning, our caseloads will start in the fall higher than they've been in the past because of the need to tighten the belt. And that doesn't mean that they were light in the past. We've always watched our money financially. But I will also, maybe it's a little proud Joyce Walker moment or Wadsworth City Schools moment, but our special ed program here is exceptional. We really are staffed to move kids. We don't let that gap grow and grow and grow. We get in there and because of the staffing and the services and the PD our staff gets and the support of our parents, we really do an amazing job meeting the needs of the kids. But most of our rooms, our crosscats are starting at capacity or one or two under capacity because there are caps that legally we have to maintain. Caseloads, it's at the elementary level 16 on a caseload. Some are starting with 14 and 15 at the beginning of the year. That's very tight because within weeks we can have kids move into the district that need a case manager. So that's going to take a lot of conversation that will be ongoing with you as we get into the year. So that's one way we can definitely, tighten our belt. And then, the other thing is just, obviously thinking about transportation that was mentioned. In the past couple of years, we've really prided ourselves in giving some of a lot of our students the opportunity to go into the community and learn, and go into the community and engage in social activities that we know grow them as individuals and get them ready to be productive citizens in our community. And we're doing that with the compact schools. Well, all of that is a cost. That's transportation. And those are the things that we're going to have to look to possibly, limit, maybe not go away, but instead of 4 activities, it might be 2, because the other districts that we network are in the exact same boat that we are as well. Norton, Copley, Barberton, we're all having the same conversation. So we're doing it that way as well. And then I think the other thing is we really probably are the majority of the WESPA staffing. A lot of that falls on that special ed side of things with our aides and attendants. And so with every IEP, we take a very, very close look at, is that attendant truly needed to maintain learning and safety? If not, then we need to shift that conversation a little bit. So.
And it's also just like Grizzly, you can't forget Grizzly Academy.
Oh,
Right,
yes.
right. We've done that, that's saved us millions of dollars that are going out the door for transportation and tuition to those other providers that are now in-house, which have increased our costs related to staffing, but not to the extent that we're paying transportation and tuition to those other providers.
I think what people don't realize, and I know you realize it because you sign those contracts, but to place a student is a 6-figure placement many times. And that's not including transportation. So that is a huge commitment. Once again, many times we don't necessarily have that as an option because that's what that student needs. But I don't know that our community always understands the amount that is tied to some of that.
So, within Joyce's area, decisions get made by a team, the IEP, Individual Education Program team, which is administrators, teachers, parents, other people that may need to be part of the school, psychologists, whoever. They're made on what are the identified needs of the student to be able to give that student a free and appropriate public education. Whatever that team then decides is what we are responsible for implementing, regardless of cost. And we we can't, we would be not legally compliant and not doing our job for the kids if somehow the IEP team went in and had some dollar threshold that they couldn't exceed. We just can't do that. And so, you know, when we look at staffing and we look at these things, yeah, we are starting off very tight. We've done that numerous times in the past. What we know that usually leads to is us having to add staff as the school year moves on. Because either students get identified that are currently with us and we then have to serve per whatever the IEP is, or students move in. And so we know that we have situations where that's probably going to be discussions that are going to have to take place as we move into the new school year, and we'll deal with that as they come up. But that's why you don't see Joyce's area on here. It's really hard to budget for. It's hard to look at, and we're constantly looking to see what can be done to control expenses. You know, as an example, Doug mentioned the Grizzly Academy. Not that all of those students are special education, but they all have unique learning needs that would have to be met otherwise if we didn't have Grizzly Academy as an option here.
I think too, the other thing that I've been talking with and thinking about with Dr. Hill is some of our contracts, outside contracts, you guys had even before I got here. These are people that, they're not just outside providers like occupational therapy or physical therapy and speech, those speeches are staff, but they're not just a contract. They know our kids, they've been in the district for a long time. And so our families, they're just part of us, even though they're a contracted service. That makes sense. But as we move to more of that fiscal side of things, that might be something that our department has to look at, you know, because, you know, it is a contracted service and we pay for that. It's very, every year that we up those contracts, we do check, but sometimes you just go for that extra 50 cents because they know our kids, if that makes sense. Let's say, it's per hour, that's not per kid. So, but that adds up. So, like Phil said, there are conversations that we can have that can get more and more difficult. So just know that that's what's on our mind, is that part of that. But with our kids, it's all about relationships. And with our families, it's all about the relationships, especially with our most fragile kids.
With staffing, the special education world has very specific ratios depending on the type of identified learning disability that a teacher is working with. So not only are there caseload maximums, as an example, if we have a classroom that has students, the only students in there have multiple disabilities, a teacher can't work with, have a caseload of more than 8. And the list goes on and on with these different things. It's all laid out in a section of the Ohio Administrative Code. But there's also another side to it that's in the Administrative Code, which is called workload. And that's where, when we get into discussions about staffing, it's not so much where's the caseload, because that number doesn't always tell the story. It's what are the minutes that are required in a student's IEP? How are those being able to be delivered? Do they have to be alone? Can they be paired with other students that have similar minutes? And how does all of that fit in to the intervention specialist, who's the person delivering the services within their contractual day? Can they actually get it done? So sometimes, because of the needs that are identified in these IEPs, somebody may be less than their caseload capacity, but there's no time in their day to be able to provide minutes. So there's a variety of different things that have to be looked at. We can apply for a waiver to exceed caseload ratios for certain situations. We've done that in the past when it made sense, but that's not a long-term solution that the department will allow. So a very regulated area. I don't know that a lot of people truly understand that the public school district is responsible for the cost. And on any given day, somebody can move in that team meeting, but at the end of the day, we may have a six-figure expense that we didn't know about the week before. And that's just the way it works.
So does that change the reimbursement from the state at all? Or is it just a standard number?
They call it, what is it called now, threshold cost?
So there's two factors there. So one, let's say a kid moves in who does count our numbers now, and we get the money and we get the categorical funding based upon his or her disability. So we would get ideally additional state aid. But, as we've heard about before, we are very far into the guarantee because of our declining enrollment. So that kid moves in, on the formula, we're gonna get additional money, but we're so far into the guarantee that we're not gonna see a dime of that additional money. Because we're receiving the maximum amount that we can. We could have 150 kids moving in the district tomorrow, we're not gonna see any additional state aid because we are a guaranteed district, which means as our enrollment's been declining, the state is continuing to give us the same amount of money, even though the formula says we should get less. Okay, so we're not gonna get additional money there. Based on that kid's cost, we do submit a threshold cost, so probably about a month ago, you might have received an email from where I talked about the work that was done in my office, collaborating with Joyce's office and a few other offices to submit threshold costs. So we get to submit to the Department of Education and Workforce the cost to educate specific kids based on their disability, the category they fall into, and what it costs to educate them, and then we get a portion of that back. So Andy mentioned we've got kids, I think we had like 9 or 10 of them that were over $100,000 to educate last year. We will get a portion of that back, probably about $20,000 for those kids back from the state.
For about $1 million for 10 kids.
Look, our responsibility is a free and appropriate public education and to be inclusive for all. And our team does an outstanding job of that, so this isn't, I want to be careful here when we talk about this. We're not complaining that that's what it is. But this is a great example, though, of how we can have unanticipated costs that we have no way to predict and budget for, that can significantly impact our budget, and does on a regular basis with this stuff. And that's why Joyce's area, when she started off and said whatever she said, unpredictable, whatever, that's what she's talking about, because we can go back and do our best to estimate what we believe the budget will be, but we're never going to get it right because there's too many variables that when we're setting those in August, we have no clue are coming our way over the next 9 months. We just don't. And so we do what we need to. We figure out how to make these things happen. We educate all like we're responsible for, and we do that happily.
And I would say as a board, you need to trust that those IEP meetings, and many of you here in the room have sat in those with me. We do right by our community kids, like Amy said, and we do it with pride and love, and we're gonna take care of them. But some of that comes with, unexpected costs. And that's why, like I said, I'm sort of that unpredictable, but I also want to send the message that we're willing to tighten as much as we can and be really creative, like Phil said, because we have to.
But we're not reflecting anything out here, and that's why.
And we also offer services to preschoolers, is that correct? Can you speak to that briefly?
And that has been a little bit tricky, I was saying, with about the last 3 years. The mandates, once again, that came our way, is if we have a student in our community that's identified, which is great, we do the testing, as soon as the student is turning 3, we are legally obligated to test, either because they come up through the Help Me Grow system, or parents request testing. Maybe they have concern about their child's speech or social development, they reach out to us, our preschool team evaluates, and then if they do qualify then for IEP support, that either happens in our preschool program, or they can go to a community preschool, but if they're on an IEP and they're not in our program, we are then also picking up the tuition for placement in a community preschool. So that's another, we have to abide by the rules in place, but that's another expense then that, once again, very unpredictable. I never know when those families are gonna reach out and say, hey, I'd like you to take a look at my child. But we do it willingly, and our goal is early intervention. The sooner you get support to students, it's dramatic how much they can grow in those first couple of years of good, solid intervention.
So Joyce mentioned they made changes changes to what they call the continuum of services that a district has to provide. So we've implemented those at least 4 years ago, maybe a little bit longer ago. They is the Department of Education. It's no longer under the Department of Education and Workforce. They're under, what's that department now? It's Youth Services or something, Department of Youth. But they have a whole section of the revised and administrative code that details how all of this stuff has to play out. So we have about a little less than 100 students in our preschool. We're required to provide an education for the students that have an identified disability. Our services for whatever the disability is. We also have typical peers, which pay tuition for preschool. And that continuum of services breaks down the different types of rooms you can have and what the breakdown has to be between student with disabilities and the number of typical peers. So we have this continuum of options within Overlook where our preschool is. We have a staff member that goes out and provides itinerant, they call it, services to different preschools in our community to deliver the services that we're required to provide, but they're not coming to our preschool. And then we have what Grace talked about with paying tuition and all this other stuff. So there's a whole world that's there as well. You didn't see any preschool stuff up here on the staffing earlier because we don't believe we can make changes at that preschool level and still be compliant with the continuum of service options that are required.
And once again, we're just very fortunate that we have so many strong preschool programs in the community. We work very, very closely with all of them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
To the non-exciting areas. But just, to stop being online processing fees, Kelly Stallman from Bear Cup, there is a small fee that we've been absorbing. She told me that it wasn't, I can't remember it for the life of me, but I told her I would mention. If that's what we're gonna do.
So what we have up here when it comes to the fees is the stuff, so there's three categories when it comes to that. There's Bear Cup, that's its own enterprise fund, cover their own cost. There's food service and enterprise fund, cover its own cost. And then there's fees that we collect, so the activity assessment fee and every student activity that has, so athletics, we charge four categories, but athletics, they pay the fee. So if you buy a $6 ticket and it's gonna cost you $7.10 at checkout, you pay $7.10. So athletics, we always pass the fee on to the purchaser. It's been internal academic or items that we do. So a kid buys a ticket to a dance, a kid buys a ticket to our BASIS activity assessment fee, and a kid pays his $30 academic fee. All of those things have always, that's what we're talking about here. Food service covers there, so the cost of food service is not in here. Bear Cup number is not in here, so we can choose, right, for our fees, when I say our fees, general fund fees that we're charging for, and we're picking up, we can do that. We can continue to pick up the food service fee. So the person puts money on their account, and they put $100 in the account, they check out $100, they pay the fee, we get $97 or whatever. Or we pass that on, they pay $103, saving that fee. So the numbers up here were just general fund. So it's not looking at food service or Bear Cup, so we can make decisions independent of those that we don't want to do. Those funds are enterprise funds, they collect fees, tuition and stuff from our residents. How we go with that doesn't necessarily change, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you know the numbers for each one of them, so Bear Cup, food, and then athletics.
Yeah.
This one's like.
So this $50,000 is just looking, is not looking at Bear Cup or food service.
Yeah.
So we stay status quo with those.
What are those totals? Yeah.
I think food service was around $30,000 so far this year, if I remember correctly, which we provided to me a week or so ago. But the food service fund is still very healthy because of the reimbursements from the COVID days. So we got, kids had free lunches, we're getting 100% reimbursement. So every kid was getting lunch every day, we're getting reimbursement for those. There's still, if we we had the cash reserve balances that the reserve fund has in the general fund, we would be having this conversation.
We've talked about that before, that's why it's been a number of years now that we have not recommended an increase in pricing for breakfast or lunch for students. Because even though costs are going up and we are spending that account down some, it's still sitting at a large amount and makes it hard to justify charging people more money for
So,
it.
if I were to advocate for changing that fee structure, I would say that we continue to pick it up for food service. I would want to consult with Fair Cup to see how they feel about them continuing to absorb that cost. And we talk about the fees that we're doing, or the student activities that we're picking up. Those fees more currently right now. So it's, right now we're sitting at $42,000 this year to pick up fees just in that category now that we hear.
Yes, it's processing fees for when they purchase stuff online. And you may recall, you may not, some of you weren't on the board at the time, when this decision was made a few years ago to actually pay up the processing fee, because we haven't always done that. It was done because we believe that two things. One, we're trying to get out of the business of cash, because cash just creates all kinds of problems with auditing and other things. And two, we had people telling us that that fee, that dollar extra or whatever it was on top of the percent on top of their thing, that they would never use the online payment because of it. And we believe that trying to eliminate the reasons people wouldn't use online while never completely eliminating the option to take cash and check. Eliminating that would cause more people to then use it for convenience purposes to pay online, and actually help us with efficiencies on the backside as well. That's why we made that decision. It's a more recent decision that we made, that you made, but that's what we've been doing. So when we talk about it, it's a significant amount of money. A good amount, like I said, 42,000 so far in that one account that we're talking about for this year. We're not done with the year. So if you were to decide to get rid of that, us picking up the processing fee, that means that people that do choose to pay online are going to be paying more because of that processing fee. And it may mean that we return to more cash or checks flowing through the buildings. That's kind of the implications of that one. Steve, what was your second one?
It's like custodial supplies, so I do believe that very minimal reductions. We've done that, we constantly are reviewing those types of purchases. We've had 3 facility supervisors in the last year. Each one of them have come in with ideas on how to reduce some supplies. Some work and some don't. But we can come up with an example. A couple of years ago, we went to single ply. Quality of life outweighed that, and we switched back to electronic. But that's an area that we would say one thing to do it and realize it's not smart. But we also look at just the weight of paper or the trash bags, different weights there too. So each one is coming and see if we can do that, and just we're trying to balance that quality of life versus. So what we're doing, but I think that's very good.
It may have been half ply, by the way.
Yeah, there we go. It was terrible.
Thank you.
Yes.
Why don't we, I think it's appropriate for us to have an opportunity to share, ask a question or comment. Do we just want to go down the line or just on?
I was gonna ask about, I don't know that we've touched a lot on bus purchases and replacement vehicle allocation. I mean, where are we at?
It's that,
Timeline.
we estimated a couple of years ago and bought more in 1 year than we typically would because we had a number that were on the age end costing us a lot. That probably, we were on a cycle that was every 20 years we replaced them, was it roughly?
Between 15 and 18 years.
Yeah. And so we expedited to a timeline that would replace every,
And I think, so, from my historical hat here, the reason we got into that, some of that situation is, if you go back to 2011, last time we were, the levy cycle that I had with fail in August, we go back in November, got it, we went a year or two without purchasing buses. We could purchase 2 to 3 buses a year, to keep that rotation going. So, when you make decisions like this, can we certainly do this? Yeah. Will it impact us? Not a whole lot right now, but someone's gonna have a problem in 10 to 15 years when we have a lot of buses and now need replaced because of valves. So ideally, that's why we do that, right? We purchase 2 or 3 years from we are at 15, 18, we're evaluating which buses need to go, so they're costing us a lot of money to do that. If we skip a few years, it impacts, not now, it impacts you later.
we made the change to 3 a year, which puts us on about a 10-year cycle. We do believe though that we can, like Dr. said, we can do this. That vehicle purchase, we have an allocation in there for, that's the 75, right?
So that covers everything from custodial equipment, so like scrubbers, to tractors for the maintenance department, to trucks for the maintenance department, to student transportation vehicles, all in that category. We usually allocate about $70,000 a year and prioritize within that on who needs something within that year. We need a student transportation vehicle, we need a new plow truck, we need a new custodial piece of equipment. I will say those 2 categories are things that we can also look at the 99 sales tax from. Those will be all purchases out of the sales tax, as well as road replacements. And something that we have not talked about replacing, but would be also an eligible purchase would be textbooks. So those are 4 categories that currently are purchased by the general fund that are eligible purchases to be made out of the 99 sales tax fund. But we know that we have a laundry list of other needs to the 99 sales tax fund, like this building right here that is getting a new boiler and chiller this summer. That's $600,000. So if we move it, it's something that's considered, even though the impact of how we on the 99 sales tax fund with other improvements and to facilities throughout the school.
So I think we can do this for the year we're talking about. The longer that we continue to do this, the greater the problem is going to be down the road. The other thing I will say, and I don't know if I said this earlier or not, so I apologize if I did. While ideally it would be great to bring some recommendations to you for consideration at your June 8th meeting based off of tonight, as far as fees and other things go. If there's more information that you need and we need to continue the discussion at the next meeting, we can do that. The one thing that I would tell you though is we've recommended that the discussion about what to do with the November ballot issue, it would be beneficial, we thought, for you to be able to see a revised forecast with all of this stuff in it, to have informed discussions about if you're going to choose, what you're going to choose, what that looks like. Just remember, like I shared on the May 11th meeting, August 5th is the date everything has to be in the board elections by. And that's 2 resolutions, some time in between, depending on option, if you choose to go that direction. So at some point, we need to have that discussion, and it's probably to your benefit, our benefit, to have some answers on this stuff factored in on what you think we're going to do before that happens. So no one should feel like you have to make decisions on this stuff tonight. Just keep the bigger picture of the timelines in mind. And we can pull anything that you need with additional info on any of these categories.
Any other board members?
I just had a question about the, the subs. Where it says professional development dash subs. It's very small.
So if we send a teacher out for professional development, we have the cost to send that teacher out.
That's awesome.
During the school year, we have to have sub also, so there's a cost there. You get the cost of paying for the sub, and we have the cost of sending that person professional.
So you have to invest in it.
And one thing that I've pushed the last 2 years with students is on our professional development days, teachers, whether they realized it or not, possibly forgot even, the idea of going places on those days as compared to during the school year. So I've started to opt to, as an example, the last PD day, the art department went and visited several locations on the professional development day instead of paying for a sub. So those are things that have started as well.
So to clarify that too, in case you're not familiar with our school calendar, a professional development day is built in, it's a day with no students. When we have professional development opportunities happening for staff here, we have what, three in a year. So that's what Eric is referring to.
Thanks.
And along the area of what we first started talking about, with the assessment fees, increasing those, looking at the links that you provided us, the schools in our area, we are, I was gonna say by far, but because we haven't increased our fees, we are like the lowest in the area. We have
Yeah.
club fees are ranging anywhere between $50 in some districts to $30-40, and we're still at $25 for any extracurricular club fees. And certainly $100 per sport is much cheaper than what I'm seeing in the districts surrounding us. So, I mean, I think that's part of the conversation that we should have in increasing those fees.
There's
It's
no
been-
doubt that for districts that charge those type of fees, of which we're one, we are on the low end of what those fees are. And so one question that could be asked is, we're suggesting a 50% increase. Is that, should it be more?
I think you could also just consider stepping up to, whether that's over 3 years or 5 years, which is not what that's stepping that up. I'm assuming we're gonna increase the cap at the same time.
The cap right now is $500. Needs to be, however we come to that conclusion, certainly something that's going to increase in some way.
Does everyone pay those fees, or do you qualify for 3 months?
So, the extracurricular assessment fee, yes, the fees that are waived by law are the instructional fees for students who qualify for free lunch only. Then, that's not even the full case if you're part of a career tech program in free lunch. If there are items that you have to pay that are things you keep, like equipment or other, then those do not have to be waived. In our district, so that's the law, that's the policy. In our district, if we have somebody that's struggling to pay fees, we've been fortunate that we have the L&J fund with a community member that donates yearly for the purposes of helping for expenses like that. We've been fortunate that we've never exceeded what's in the L&J fund in any one year with requests that have come through. Those come through our building principals, when they become aware of needs. So that's how fees work. But so the activity assessment fee does not get waived regardless of scenario. But we're also, I will tell you this, there's probably families out there that had a student that didn't participate maybe because of that. We're not aware of anybody that's ever come and said, I can't pay this, can you help? That has been told, no, you can't play. If we find out about it, one way, shape, or form, that fee is getting covered and taken care of for a student, usually through L&J.
Which other school, yes.
The say how many have never approached and asked and just stayed away because of.
Any comments or questions?
I think it was very enlightening. I didn't know that our teachers were going to private daycares to assess kids. I mean, that's awesome. And I don't think most of the community would know that either. I mean, there's a lot of costs associated with educating children more than just, having a teacher and a copy machine. I mean, it's really, $1 million for 10 kids is a lot of money, but it's very worthwhile. Every kid deserves the opportunity. And I just am surprised that, we have to foot the bill for that. That's incredible. There was one other thing about fees, and I think I discussed this with you already. The $42,000 or whatever that we have to pay for transaction fees. I think you said, isn't it, there's only a certain program that we can tie into the students' accounts? Was that what it was, or was there? Because I was
Yeah,
like,
you should
issues,
right, you could ask if they can be other things. The student information system, where all of this stuff flows between, what do they call it, the vendor link, is that what they use? There are very few companies that are allowed to be able to run information into that program or out of that program. So, we're limited in what can be utilized.
Our transactions and fees like educational, home insurance, et cetera, it all flows through Pay Schools and into our student information system. Pay Schools has got a very competitive rate. It's not extraordinary at all.
Did you resolve that for the PTO discussion last year?
Yeah, so you may have, I can never remember the name. The PTO suggested there was a platform out there where people could donate.
like years or something?
And it would go to them. I actually utilized that for another nonprofit I gave, and there are fees. It's not free.
But I mean, they'll have, I guess they don't have to have consistent virtual things that they're paying. That's our question.
A lot of them were using that other platform. We don't mandate what PTOs use because they're their own separate 501c3 organization. So that's not our.
I'm just trying to throw out things. With my consultant hat on, I would be suggesting that we all our contracts ready. They don't have it on. He's here. With my consultant hat on, I would be making a suggestion to look at all our contracts ready. Opportunities within our contracts.
Absolutely. I've already started going back to these companies saying, well, sorry, there's tariffs. And I say, well, there's a levy. And so instead of taking your 20% increase, I take a 40% increase. Thanks. And so I am very, very aggressive with that with all of our contracts and our vendors. So the price that we got on our product was going to go down because I was so early and so aggressive. So we'll do that.
We've seen that in curriculum too, right? Where they renegotiate.
Oh yeah.
Very much so. We went down about $400,000 from the initial proposal. So,
I don't want to belabor the conversation. I want to make sure everybody has a chance, so.
Yeah, we just, go.
Go over it. Yeah.
On busing, do we have anything in here, are we making any decision about, cutting the
Distance.
distance, yeah?
So we're still working through those scenarios. I don't have those for you yet. I told our transportation supervisor was supposed to be and is gathering all of that information. They're not ready yet. But we did ask for some different scenarios. The fiscal precaution plan, as that's starting the following fiscal year, doesn't mean it can't happen sooner. So as soon as we have what we think projected savings would be with different scenarios, I'll share those so we can have discussion.
I'm assuming that if you're doing less busing, there's gonna be less wear and tear on the bus, so you can save money on maintenance.
Yeah, we're trying to look at both the wear and tear cost, fuel, and then also, staffing and what would be needed to be able to do these. Some of the things that we move to would potentially require some alteration of maybe scheduling with the intermediate school with its campus. And that could create other logistical traffic type issues if they were to have to move to, there's a lot to work through. So we were originally working through that on the timeline, understanding that that was something that if we went to it, would be fiscal year 28, not 27. To know that there's a request to have that stuff, so we can look at it now. So we are working through that. But when I initially gave it to Cole, it was with the understanding that this will be discussion, not initially for, I believe, the upcoming year. Now, understanding that has to change.
Three different scenarios, correct?
Yeah, so right now, the state requires anybody kindergarten through 8th grade that lives more than 2 miles from their assigned school. And at the high school level, it's transportation from our high school building to the career tech program the students in and back to the high school. Our practice here and board policy that predates me is, so at least 13 years, probably much longer than that.
96.
Yeah. Is we transport students that live 1 mile or more to school, kindergarten through 12th grade. So we had Cole looking at different scenarios, if we were to go to state minimum, if we were to increase our radius to 1.5, if we were to increase it to 2, but still leave it K-12. So that's what we're getting. I think it's 3 different scenarios, of which once we have those ideas, we then may be able to come off with some other scenarios as well. And that's what we're trying to get the information on. We are going to, I'll check in with him to see where that's at. If that's something we're seriously considering for the upcoming school year, then that's going to need to be an expedited discussion. There's staffing implications. We have deadlines for reductions in staff that probably approach us coming into the month of July at some point to give the notice required so that we're not paying people to start a school year. And we also have implications with the state of Ohio. Once we actually commit and implement a busing schedule, we cannot reduce the level of service during the school year. That's illegal. And so I'll have to take a look to see what is that actual date. Is it the start of the school year? Or is it when we actually finalize calendars and schedules? Because there's also some dates that come into play with when we have to arrange service with chartered non-public schools that we have to transport to by law or declare students impractical to transport. And we have to have so many days prior to the start of their school year decisions and scheduling to them. So we're going to be coming up on some dates here pretty quickly. If transportation is something that we want to look at for this coming school year, we're probably less than a month from needing to actually make those decisions to implement them.
Professional development, are we contractually required to fund professional development for our teachers?
I can take a look at what's there. We have days that are built in for professional development. We also have a professional development committee that's in the contract. We have certain situations that are addressed in the contract where PD may be needed. As an example, if somebody is on a performance improvement plan, I believe the language in our contract speaks to professional development and cost. I'm not sure that it does in the other areas, so we can get an answer to that.
Because is this part of, and I don't know, with respect to teachers, with respect to maintaining or updating certifications, licensures?
Yes, some of that form. The best example I provided earlier was regarding some of the licensure for carnival buses, as an example.
But in other areas, a teacher would have to keep their license
Yeah,
up to date is on them.
it's on them. Can they utilize some of the stuff that they do for PD? Yes, if they write their individual professional development plan that way, and the local professional development committee approves it. There's a lot though in professional development that are things that we won't be able to necessarily get away from. When we do a textbook adoption, the amount of professional development that goes in, that's absorbed in the cost for those textbooks with the people from the companies, has to happen somewhere in time to make that happen. Like that's what's been going on during the month of May with that ELA adoption that just happened. And that will continue when we move into the next school year. So there's certain things that we're never going to be able to fully get away from in that area. There's other areas that this way it would be nice for us to send you out to go learn this, to come back and work with our students and train others. That maybe is not something that's essential in the moment.
So that 60% we're talking about are those types of things that,
They would have leave money for it. It would very much reduce the type of decisions that Aaron can make when we get these requests that come in.
I'm trying to give them a heart attack right now.
And the money that's left there would have to be first allocated to things that we absolutely have to do.
Textbook.
Correct.
And then things that we would like to do that would be beneficial, but don't have to do, like the others.
Just in my role, for example, that is a month and a half ago, I spent 3 days in Columbus at the Wadsworth workshop, getting up to date on legal requirements, state budget, all those things that is incredibly beneficial to me to be a successful freshman. Did I have to go to that? No. Have I done my job still? No. Did I gather valuable resources by being there? Yes. Did it make me better? Yes. I think those are the types of things that set people to gain additional knowledge to bring back to the district to make them better in what they're doing, to give them additional tools in their tool belt that are important. We have to. No, it doesn't make us a better district without a doubt. I think those are the things that will be to be continued to be reviewed, like Gary said, as to whether we send that teacher or that support staff person or that administrator to whatever conference or professional opportunity to gain resources.
It could be yearly, or it could be every other. We talked about creating a cycle as well. Phil has lived that with me, with some different things, so. Continued conversation, Mrs. Walker as well, just different conversations to make sure we're meeting needs, but also stretching it to the rest of our goal.
I think in the last 10 years, we worked really hard with our Just Works program to have someone who goes out and gets the training and brings it back and then trains our staff. So it's sort of that train the trainer model. So we pay for one to get as much instruction as possible, but then they come back and on PD days, they're providing workshops that cost us nothing. So that's the mindset we've had the last couple of years.
Yeah, I guess you're talking, there are a lot of examples of that. There's a technology conference where I typically want to send at least 4 of my staff members, including myself, in that to it. And it's technology specifically for K-12 and higher ed education. That's the focus, that's who's there. And there's so many beneficial sessions that we spread out and we divide and conquer. And the stuff that we've learned in those years past have revolutionized some of the things that we've done in the district. We're not sending people this year, except for one. So those things that are incredibly great that we can cut back. So, yeah.
And then lastly, with respect to the revenue enhancements, I struggled with this when it seems as though we're tripping over dollars to pick up terms of saving with respect to Doug, you going to your conference. You're very valuable, you're one person. If we told you not to go, whatever you would have saved on that, on a $67 million budget is it's not even pocket change, so.
Just for the record, I slept on my kids' couch.
So when we're evaluating any of these things, we, want to get the best bang for our buck that impacts kids directly as little as possible. I don't think that's anything that anybody else disagrees with, but I worry about like the activity assessment fees, and what you mentioned with kids not being able to participate in a lot of these things. These activities are a lifeline to our kids. It's essential in my mind to allow them to get education and be able to participate in these things. I understand that we are charging less than, and I looked at Highland especially because they're closest to us. That gave me a little bit of heart, but I get concerned about doing too much of that for an extended period of time, because in a lot of these situations, parents are already paying a ton of money for kids to be able to participate. So I caution if we're going to start raising a family cap and things like that, we need to, because we haven't really seen what the dollar amount for that would be. So before we would do that, I'd like to see how many families have hit the cap that we already have, how would that impact folks, and then making sure that we do whatever we can to make sure that if a kid can't afford to do something, that we find whether it's through that fund or something else, because again, the amount of money that we're talking about here, $6 to $8 grand, while not insignificant, as we're putting all this stuff together on a budget as big as ours, it's sometimes tripping over dollars, pay that kind of places like that. So, and I don't know if we have that information on the family cap at this point. That's something I'd like to see and understand a little bit more.
The vast majority of this list is items under $100,000. Many things that add up. I don't disagree, that's why I mentioned this step approach. You can't,
Yeah, but right off the bat, yeah, but
Sorry,
I do not. Go ahead.
just to say to Amanda's point about families, we go back a couple of August, we seem to have a recurring conversation surrounding fees at the beginning of the year. So this is our list of fees. This does not include activity assessment fees. That general fee down there is the one we spoke about earlier. And these are the other fees that are there for certain classes. I think it's the description of what's there. So keep in mind, this type of fee has never been part of any type of family cap. And when we get families that have high school age students, in the past you've expressed concern because we've heard from families about this large bill that they have with multiple kids in high school fees. So I don't want this, while we're not talking about everything listed above the general K-12 fee, we can't lose sight of the fact that that's there too. We're not suggesting any kind of increases to that, but increases to something else are going to definitely then create a larger problem for the families that you've heard from in past years with the concern that's been here. So I don't know how we weigh and factor all of that in with where we're at. Just a reminder. The other thing that is here is this is the 4 cities compact. I talked about some of this stuff earlier with what's allowed to be waived or not waived.
Thank you.
This is our programs here at Wadsworth and what students pay. So as an example, if you're in diversified medical technology, it's $148 down, those are items that you keep. So, a student on free lunch isn't getting that fee waived. If we look at, Norton, the Copley programs, and then these are Barberton, now these are the current school year. I don't know if other districts are making any changes for the upcoming year. But this is what was in place for the current school year. So you can see there's a lot of different costs. And I guess my point is just simply holistically, as you look at all of this, there's more than just general K-12 and activity assessment. That's all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you, Jim.
Doug, quick couple questions. The high deductible healthcare plan, when do people want to opt into that? Is there a date?
Yes, so the high deductible healthcare plan starts in January, so there'll be a separate, we're just finishing our current open enrollment period.
Alright.
Our plan year starts July 1st, but deductibles and co-insurance run on a calendar year basis by law.
Okay.
So it would not make sense to try and switch to a high deductible healthcare plan midway through the year, so they have 6 months to meet that high deductible plan, and nobody can switch to July. So the plan all along was to have a second open enrollment period in
That tracks.
in the fall, and then that will be effective January 1.
So there could be some additional revenue savings.
Yeah, so there, nothing related to the high deductible healthcare plan is in that forecast that adopted forecast and or the draft forecast that is in your package tonight. There's not going to be anything associated with any additional savings that might be realized by people enrolling in it.
But our TPA that we work with, third party, in similar situations where something like this has happened, although every plan is unique to the district, they said that they've seen anywhere between 20 to 30%, was that the number, switch over. And so if we were to try to equate what could be a savings with this, I think we were around $100 some thousand, but that's all very preliminary. What the plan is the TPA is going to hold meetings for interested employees to sit down and do a financial comparison of the current usage and cost versus what it would be with the new plan to help people make informed decisions. I think they talked about an open enrollment period in November-ish, so I would think by the end of November, we'll probably have an idea of how many people plan to move over. But there should be some, whether it's the high end of what they've seen in other places or somewhere below, I think we should anticipate there'll be some type of savings that's not factored in anywhere yet, because we just don't know for sure what to factor in. Thank you.
And the homestead extension, exemption, is that a year-to-year thing? Is there a possibility that might reoccur?
So the commission has adopted it for 1 year. In recent information, we were told of the counties that did it, we were the only counties that did it for only 1 year. Everybody else did it, it's there for continuing. So right now in the forecast, it is only for 1 year. My gut tells me that it's probably not just 1 year, but that's what we're going with right now.
I think they're coming up with a date though, and I was just thinking this over the weekend, I need to go look, but I feel like after the initial implementation year, which gave them a later date, I feel like it was July 1.
And
That's right, yeah.
I think July 1 was the, so if they're going to do something, I believe we're getting close to the date that they're gonna have to take action, or they missed the opportunity for calendar year 2027. So we can verify when that date is, and we can actually even ask, or just send a message to them and ask, do you have any intentions?
or not.
Yeah, maybe not.
You don't need to
I'm
remind
not
them.
Yeah. If the board is comfortable, I'd like to kind of wrap this discussion up. I think it's been good for us to have this conversation. It shows that even we're always willing to learn. We're learning a lot as we go through this process. For those that are here, the guests, thank you for being here. For those that are watching, this has been one of our goals as a board for years to I'm just gonna briefly return to the survey that was referenced at our May 11th meeting. That went out to the community, we had about 850 people respond. And then the top one, that people seemed to give the most support for was mental health and well-being for students. Right behind that was access to affordable extracurricular activities. Right behind that was access to current technology resources. And a smaller number of classrooms, kindergarten through second grade. So obviously we're at this position where we have to listen to the community and hear what they want, and also respect the decision that was made on May 5th. And so we're having to make some challenging decisions in light of what people say they want. I feel like this conversation was productive, that we were able to sort of walk through this process and make educated decisions. And I certainly appreciate the creativity and willingness of our administrators that with what they shared tonight, with the willingness to assess what's on their plate and to look for where reductions can be made, but also keep the well-being of our students at the forefront of all that we do. So thank you for you guys for sharing. It was very helpful for us to hear. If there's no other conversation, is there anything else that we need to report before?
My question just would be for the June 8th, which is your next scheduled meeting, do we add this as a discussion item to give some time for thoughts, to get some direction on what it is you may want then us to act on for the upcoming year? Or what is it, and is there additional information based off of tonight outside of what Amanda's asked for that we said we would look and get some answers to, that you need to be able to take that next step with discussion and decisions? That would be my question, just so I'm clear on what you need next and where we go.
I would be curious to know what the number would be if we just stripped everything down to state minimum. So people would know, we don't want to be at state minimum, but I'm saying if we took all of our services and went straight down to the state minimum, what would that extra cost be? Like, how much more are we spending to give the students what they deserve, what we feel that is best for them? I think people would be interested to know.
Do you need that by June 8th?
Well, I'm curious. It doesn't have to
I'm
be by
asking
June 8th.
because this is for June 8th, so do you need that for June 8th, or is that just an estimate?
It'd be nice to know. Just so
So
people
it's
know.
it's a bigger estimate, so
Yeah.
June 8th is.
Goddamn, what are you talking about? No,
So
not by
I
June 8th.
have enough information on here, I have no questions about
Okay.
the report that we have on this list.
So then we would make recommendations
If
if we're comfortable on it.
I guess I'm ultimately looking for, are we engaging in further dialogue with what's on the list? Are we making any modifications to that? Am I supposed to be bringing back recommendations? Because to do what's on the list is going to require me to recommend a series of different things to you. As an example, fees for the upcoming school year. As an example, revision to rental policy 7510. So if that's what you're looking for in June 8th, I want to make sure we have that for you. But if more discussion is needed before we get to those final decisions, I want to respect that too. And I feel like I've heard some different things, so I just want to make sure I'm clear on.
Are we all comfortable with, and I know there's a few items that we want to change to dollar amounts as opposed to percentages, but are we all comfortable with increasing the assessment fees, the rental fees, by 50%? Last year, $45. Is that something that we want to discuss more by June 8th, or?
I would say yes, except the family cap issue is the only one. Because we haven't really even talked about, are we increasing that by 50% to what was our, I think we don't have a written proposal on that, I guess. Right, what does that look like? I don't have a scenario, so how many people get it, and these are what
So we'll come back with some additional information regarding family camp. And then we finalize this discussion
what do we need?
You're gonna be asked to set a special meeting for as close to June 30th as we can to end the fiscal year.
Yeah.
So we can intend to bring back final. But if we have an idea on June 8th where you're at, then that can help them move forward with plugging some numbers in. And that next discussion then that needs to happen. I guess my last question for you with the June 8th meeting, do you want to begin the discussion about then what to do with November? Or is that a discussion we don't currently have any meetings scheduled in July? It always changes with special meetings.
Yeah.
So-
I think we have to.
Okay, so we'll add that as a discussion, we'll put this on with the assessment fees as a discussion item. It sounds like that's where we're at with tonight. We'll put on the November discussion to have on June 8th as well. Let's see where we go.
And the June 8th meeting will be a public meeting, so there'll be
Yes.
opportunity for public comment.
Correct. Yeah, and that meeting will be in the Apple Bay Performing Arts Center, like all of your regular scheduled meetings are. So we'll be back over there for that meeting. We are working on sound, so that was not our best night.
So our goal would be final discussion on increasing some of these fees, the 8th, having the final decision by June 30th, or whatever that date is.
So just from my perspective, so I make sure I can hear everything. So I think that on this feedback, this document that I provided, the top two items, so the personnel stuff, like Andy, that would be relay, those
Right,
things that we talk about are down the road, like that stuff's happening. The two top items are what's still up for discussion is where we're going to go. So for example, you look at this draft forecast, it has everything that's on this front sheet here. So it has like bus purchases, 0 bus purchases for the next 3 years. Like we need to hone in, like where do we want to land on that? It has the technology reduction that we talked about. It's got the PD reductions that we talked about. So we need to kind of hone in to see, is that like a fiscal year 27 thing and a fiscal year 29 thing? Is it all 3-year thing? Is it 1-year thing? And the impact there. And then if you look on here, you'll see that I've got a highlighted line up here for income tax and then an additional line that I put in here for property tax. So I'm set to go and say, run scenarios based on after we figure out where our costs are, and where our revenue is, and what that does to the forecast as far as our deficit spending. Then if you want to start having discussions about a potential ballot issue in November, I'm ready to go. We can plug in numbers to say, hey, we X bills or X percent, and see what that does to our deficit spending in our bottom line. So I think that's where we probably need to go on June 8th, is solidifying the items from the front page and how they impact it. And then if there's additional items that we can be added to that, and then start having those discussions with people who intend to move in that direction. Just because, as Andy mentioned, you're not having that meeting scheduled in July, and there's going to be required to have an ACC before the August.
So, and I think we can take this discussion tonight and some of the changes that we've talked about relating to these items, like dollar instead of percent. We can come back and get to you prior to doing a cleaned up version with maybe even some recommendations on length of time and other things based off of what we heard tonight and questions you asked. That could maybe be a starting point for the last part of the conversation that has to happen. If you're comfortable with that.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so Doug and I will work on that and we'll have something to you prior to June.
I thank you.
Thanks.
We need that.
Yes, I am. Thank you all for attending. Thank you for our guest,